Hi guys, TotallyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a review on the HiFiMan Ananda BT. And no, the title was not clickbait. These are among one of the best sounding Bluetooth headphones I've ever come across. However, they do come at a premium. They cost around $1,000 in the US or around £1,100 in the UK, if not a little bit more. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So first off, I want to talk about what you actually get in the box. Now in the box, you'll get a flight case and obviously everything else inside it. The flight case itself has a hard shell carrying case and a little handle over here, which makes it a little bit easier to carry around. Now inside the box, you'll find the headphones. You'll get two sets of cables. Now the two set of cables are both with a USB Type-C on one side, and that's purely because that the Ananda BT have a USB Type-C input, which is great to see, but one of them is terminated with USB Type-C, whereas the other one is a USB Type-A. And that's because you can connect either or depending on your device. So let's say you've got more legacy or like a normal computer, you'll do USB Type-A, or if you've got a more modern laptop, for example, you can use USB Type-C. And the reason behind this is, one, you can use it to charge the headphones, be it at a wall plug or again your computer, or you can use it in order to use it as a, not say DAC, but the headphone has a built-in DAC and therefore bypasses sound via cable, which is great. There's also a small little microphone included with a 3.5mm jack input. Now this is decent to have it included. However, the actual headphone and the microphone just look a bit silly. It's really small. If you compare it to, for example, a normal microphone size that you'd expect, so for example from the ModMic over here, you can see it's a lot larger and a lot longer and just much better built. Now of course that's a dedicated microphone, which is great to see, but I would have liked to see HiFiMan including a slightly better, a bit more flimsy headphone that actually kind of sticks in place rather than, I don't know, it just feels very flimsy. As for the quality of it, it's not great. I'll give you a demo in a little bit, but the quality of audio recording is pretty shocking for a headphone at this price. Now, in terms of the inputs, what I was telling you about the cables, it's great to see that that's included and the fact that HiFiMan are kind of forward thinking with USB Type-C. However, the issue is that there's no 3.5mm jack input. And yes, before you say it, there's a 3.5mm jack right there. Yes, that is for the microphone only. That is not used for any bypassing of sound. So therefore, if you've got a high quality DAC, so let's say the Cord Yugo 2 over here, you can't use that with the headphones. There's no way of doing that. You have to use a USB input, which, you know, this doesn't have any USB input. So for audio output. So in other words, you can only use USB, which would be directly to your computer, or via Bluetooth to your smartphone, or again to your computer or your laptop. But it's just a shame that there's no auxiliary 3.5mm jack input as an option for audiophiles that want to use a high quality DAC. Now with that out of the way, as I mentioned before, the 3.5mm jack is for the microphone only. The USB Type-C can be used for charging and can be used for audio in terms of if you got a signal to your PC, for example. However, this doesn't work simultaneously. In other words, you can't charge and listen at the same time. You can only listen or charge, which is completely flawed in my opinion, because it somewhat defeats the point of having, say, a wired headset or a wired headphone. I know this is the BT version, but I just would have expected that functionality to be pretty basic, because every other headphone on the market, well, most of them have that sort of functionality. So it's surprising to see that the Ananda BT doesn't have it. More so, in terms of actually using it, you have this on and off button which you use, but then in order for you to plug it into your computer and use it as DAC function, which works flawlessly, when you have to switch and charge, you have to press a button which is literally dedicated to switch from charging or to USB. It's in the manual as well, and it really much surprises me to see that there's an actual button for that. I presume it's due to the way the DAC is built in with the headphones, but again, pretty disappointing in terms of a design point of view. As for the button over here, again, pretty disappointing to see that it's only play and pause. It's not got previous or next, which again is pretty basic on most Bluetooth headphones. There's not a function over here, and also you can't customize it via an app or anything like that, so you're pretty much stuck with just play and pause. So it's worth bearing that in mind, and something that I would say I'm not very impressed in terms of the functionality and the way that the actual headphone is designed. But in terms of the actual design, as in the aesthetics of the headphone, I've got no complaints. It's just not a headphone I'd wear out and about because it's pretty large, to say the least. If you look at the driver size over here and you compare it with a HiFiMan Sandara, you can see this thing completely dwarfs this little headphone over here. And these aren't exactly small size headphones, it's just that these look absolutely huge. So on the head they do look silly, they don't look exactly what you'd want to wear outside, but if you're at home I don't think you're going to have an issue with how you look to the outside world. In terms of comfort, this has got a suspended design. It's built out of metal on the top in terms of aluminium that goes all the way around. You've got a fabric over here which sits at the top of your head really comfortably. And in terms of the pads over here, they're pretty soft, but they've got a pretty quick spring back, which means they don't have that memory foam type of design. On the plus side, that does mean it doesn't absorb too much sweat and it doesn't get too hot over time. So therefore, they're very much comfortable to wear for long periods of time. Another thing I should bear in mind is the actual size of the driver. Now, normally I comment on if the driver is too small because I've got pretty big ears. But in this case, the headphones are so big, they actually kind of extend down from my jaw, which does create a problem when it comes to comfort and sort of isolation. If you compare it again to the Sandara, if you ignore the little pad that's coming out, you can see that difference in terms of driver over here is, well, it's pretty large. And also the fact that this is circular and that's oval shaped. Now oval shaped is not a big deal, it's just, again, the size of the actual driver itself is pretty large. So you will want to potentially try before you buy because it might not fit properly on your head. Speaking of that, there is adjustments. You've got the adjustment over here, which is pretty hard to do, but it opens up to a good extent. And in terms of the headphone clamp itself, it's not got an overly strong clamp. And for someone like myself who actually wears glasses, it's actually comfortable and doesn't dig into the side of my ears that like some headphones do. Very much sort of the good philosophy of the Sandara. They're very comfortable headphones to wear for long periods of usage. As for adjustments, you can see the headphones have got a slight little pivot over here. They've also got that adjustment over there, as I mentioned before, and they do that. So in terms of that, you will find a fit for you depending on the size of your head. I don't think you'll have that much of an issue, but as I said before, just bear in mind that it might overhang past your jaw because of the sheer size of the thing. So right now, everything you can hear is coming straight from the headphone. You can hear the sound is pretty muffled and it doesn't sound good whatsoever. And if I'm to compare it to the ModMic, it's pretty much a 19-day difference in terms of the audio quality. So in terms of the actual sound, well, the recording quality you get from the headset, or let's say the headphones, the Bluetooth headphones, it's pretty poor, as I mentioned before. So in terms of the recording quality, you can be the judge yourselves, but as I mentioned before, it's not quite the best. In terms of the look, as you can see, this is how the headphones look like on the head. They're not exactly the smallest things in the world, so it's just worth bearing that in mind. But now let's talk about a few other elements that I somewhat forgot to mention when it came to charging. These take around 3 hours to charge to full, and they will last around 10 hours on a single charge. Now that isn't incredible, but for planar magnetic headphones, that's actually pretty good. They're pretty efficient headphones. Furthermore, they've got an impedance of around 35 ohms, which again shows that the technology in terms of the driver technology that goes inside these is pretty impressive. And as for the DAC itself, it does support 24-bit 192 over USB and 24-bit 96 kHz over Bluetooth, which is super impressive. Now, if you're wondering how the latter actually does work, is that you'll have to have a phone that either supports LDAC or HWA codec, and that is where you've got the pretty much limitless or lossless type of sound over Bluetooth. This does also support aptX and aptX HD, which is again great to see. And of course, you've got SBC and AAC support there. So you've got pretty much every single Bluetooth codec you can think of lobbed into these headphones. And it's great to see that because truly an audiophile product wouldn't be an audiophile product if it didn't support all those codecs. So good job HiFiMan for including those. So now we get on to the most important part of this review, the actual performance of it. Now the headphones themselves were actually pretty impressive. Coming from the HiFiMan Sandara as purely an A/B test because it's the headphones I had, I was very impressed to see how these headphones sounded. Be it from wired or actually over wireless in terms of Bluetooth to my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, I was super impressed in terms of how these headphones were able to bring a pretty detailed response throughout the whole frequency range. So let's start off with the bass. The sub bass actually is there. Whereas with these HiFiMan Sandara, which is somewhat rolled off and cut off on the sub bass tones and even the mid bass tones, these Ananda BT do provide a very nice rumble. Now don't get me wrong, it's not going to compete with closed back headphones that provide that meaty type of rumble that you would like. And so let's say if you listen to R&B music, however, they do produce a decent rumble. The mid bass is pretty accurate, really nice and tight. And if I compare it to, let's say, the Sennheiser HD 820, for example, the closed back variants of the HD 800 or 800S, those headphones, not say struggle, but they're similar in terms of sound, in terms of the mid bass tones. Whereas these ones, I would have said, come out a little bit on top in terms of the bass department versus the Sennheisers. Again, versus Sundara, it's pretty much no competition. These come out on top. Moving on to the mid-range, this is where things get a little bit interesting. For pure audiophiles that really like that mid-range presence, these headphones will sound a little bit V-shaped and a little bit warmer sounding. To my ears, for someone who prefers a slight V-shaped sound signature, I really liked it because it didn't sacrifice the mid-bass and the sub-bass. For the mid-range, it kind of has it sort of equal. Whereas with the Sennheiser HD 820 or the 800S, you are very much looking at more of a mid-centric headphone with very little emphasis on bass, which is perfectly fine if you want that sort of sound signature. But when you start listening to sound, music, shall I say, or even watching movies or games, something with a little bit more bass and a little bit more oomph does really come across. And personally, that's why I prefer closed back headphones. But this Ananda BT really did a great job in terms of replicating somewhat what I would expect from a closed back headphone, which is again very impressive. What I'm trying to say over here is the mid-range isn't as forward-sounding and as impressive as the Sennheiser range. Yet it will sound incredibly well. If you've listened to the HiFiMan Sundara, for example, you'll come across that very nice mid-range, except this takes it one step further and just sounds a lot cleaner throughout the mid-range tones, specifically in the upper mids. Moving on to the highs, I didn't find them sibilant in the slightest. I found them very comfortable to listen to, and I had no issue in terms of ear fatigue. Again, something that wouldn't be said with some other headphones out there on the market, such as the Grado Bluetooth headphones. They're a little bit sensitive on the high end, and it can be a little bit uncomfortable to listen to at higher volumes or more so for a longer period of time. These felt smooth and very much comfortable to listen to at the high end. What was very impressive was the soundstage. Now, over the Sundara, which I deem as one of the best open back headphones for its price, for around £500, these took it to a somewhat another level. They opened up that soundstage and opened up that width and depth that the Sundara wasn't able to produce, which kind of blew my mind in some respect. That said, for a headphone at this price, I would have expected that. And again, comparing to something like the Sennheiser headphones, these are somewhat on par with the Sennheiser headphones, but not quite that sort of level of incredible open air sound. These somewhat sound between closed or mid-open type of headphones. And again, don't get me wrong, they're very much open back headphones and they leak a lot of sound and they're very much open. But in comparison to someone like the Sennheiser headphones, which truly feel completely transparent, these don't sound as transparent and as open. Is that a problem? Well, it really depends. If you're really looking for that really open, wide soundstage, the Sennheiser headphones would be a better pick. However, if you want something that's a little bit more rounded, the Ananda BT does a really good job. And of course, let's not forget, these are Bluetooth headphones, not just regular wired headphones, so somewhat hard to compare. But I just want to give you that because a lot of audiophiles or people in shops that can go and try stuff will have access to the Sennheiser headphones. If you're lucky enough to live in a major city, you probably will be able to go and try out the Sennheiser headphones at your local hi-fi store or let's say a department store. And therefore you can assimilate what I'm saying to you in this video and compare them to these headphones, which will be a lot harder to find in order for you to try before you buy. So ultimately, what do I think of the sound quality? Well, I think it's really good. It's pretty incredible, actually. Planar magnetic headphones, open back, great sounding on the whole, decent in terms of their mid bass and sub bass response. Overall, nothing to complain about, but nothing to overly stand out about either. They're not exactly that bass monster or the one that's going to really compete with closed back headphones, and neither is it that open back headphone that's really going to compete with the Sennheiser headphones. But again, I have to kind of put it into perspective. The These headphones I'm comparing it to are purely wired headphones, and yes, they can be plugged into your high-end DAC, and you can get really good sound from them depending on the DAC you choose, but that is defeating the point of these headphones because these are Bluetooth headphones. And for Bluetooth headphones, as I mentioned before, it wasn't clickbait. These are the best sounding Bluetooth headphones I've ever come across. And you'd expect that for the price range, but you'd be not overly surprised to hear that some brands create Bluetooth headphones and they fail to deliver in all aspects. Now don't get me wrong, the Ananda BT has some fundamental flaws, but those flaws aren't to do with the codecs, which is very important when it comes to Bluetooth, the Bluetooth technology itself, which has no problems in terms of transmission or in terms of battery life, for example, or the sound, which again is the utmost important thing for an audiophile Bluetooth product. These things, HiFiMan have absolutely excelled and done the best job I think they could have potentially done for this price range and this type of headphone. However, there are some fundamental flaws with this headphone which make me suggest you to think twice about your purchase, and they come from the functionality point of view. You can't charge and use them at the same time, which seems flawed. You can't have the headphones plugged in with a different microphone, or the fact that you can't actually use a 3.5mm jack input for you to plug it into a DAC, which seems again counterintuitive. And they're massive, so for Bluetooth headphones, you're not going to want to take these out and about, and they're open back, so you're going to leak sound, and also you're going to hear a lot of environmental sound. So for a Bluetooth product, these are somewhat of a niche product. So I do like what HiFiMan have done here. They've really produced the best sounding Bluetooth headphones I've ever come across, but they're very much a niche product. If you're someone who's going to be using them at home and has the relevant phone or your source that can output the right codec, and you don't mind not charging and using them at the same time if you're using them with a PC, and again, if you don't mind having a pretty poor sound quality mic, or you have a different mic, then these headphones will be for you. But you can see how this trickles all down and becomes a very niche product. So there we go. That's been my honest, independent review. I'd like to thank HiFiMan for actually sending me these out for, again, an honest review. If you do like this type of content, make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and favorite, share to share it with your family and friends so that they can potentially see what the best sounding headphones actually look like and what a reviewer that's not paid and completely unbiased thinks about them. So there we go, guys. I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye-bye.